Go.
Buenas tardes
Good
a
afternoon,
todos y todas. Antes de
everyone.
comenzar, les recuerdo a
Before we
los y las
begin, I would like to
participantes
remind to all of the
por Zoom que
participants
tenemos a
that are
disposición el
over
servicio de
Zoom that
interpretación
we have
español.
available interpreting services for English and
Solo deben
Spanish.
elegir la opción que les
You
acomode
just
en
need
el
to
botón
choose the
interpretación
option you
que
see
está en la
fit in
pantalla
the
de abajo.
interpreting button at the screen below.
Además, a través de YouTube de FAO
So,
Américas estamos
also
transmitiendo
on
en
the YouTube of
español y en
our
inglés.
Americas, we're broadcasting in both English and Spanish.
Pido por favor que mantengan sus
I would
cámaras
like
y
to ask
micrófonos
you that
apagados
please keep your
en los
microphones
momentos en
and
que los
cameras
participantes
off
tomen la palabra.
when other participants take the floor.
Les comento que este encuentro está siendo
I would like to tell
transmitido en
you that
tiempo
this
real a
meeting
través del
is
canal de YouTube
broadcasted
de
in
FAO
real time through
Américas,
the
desde donde
YouTube
podrán
channel of
enviar sus
Americas,
comentarios y
where you can
preguntas.
send all of your questions and comments.
Les damos la bienvenida y
We'd
bienvenidos
like
a
to
todos y
kindly
todas que están
welcome
aquí
you all
presentes
here
al diálogo
today
temático La
to
igualdad
the
de
thematic
género y
dialogue,
las
gender
acciones necesarias
equality,
para
and
reducir las brechas.
necessary actions to reduce the gap.
Diálogo que forma parte de las
This is the
instancias de
dialogue that is part
consultas de la
of
sociedad
the
civil en el
consultations
marco del
opportunities for civil
38º
society
periodo de
in the
sesiones
framework
de la
of
Conferencia
the
Regional de la FAO para
sessions of the
Latinoamérica y el Caribe.
national FAO conferences
Es un foro
for Latin
oficial
America
donde los
and the
ministros de
Caribbean. This is an official
Agricultura y
forum
altos
where the
funcionarios
ministers
de
of
los Estados
agriculture and
miembros de la
high
región
uh,
se reúnen para
positions in
debatir
the
sobre
member
los
states of
temas
the
y
region
cuestiones
gather and
prioritarias
talk about
relacionados
the
con la
challenges and
alimentación y la
priority challenges
agricultura,
related
con el
to
fin de
food
promover la cohesión
availability and
regional y
agriculture
las acciones políticas.
with the purpose of promoting regional coherence in
Disculpen,
policies. I'm sorry.
con el fin de promover la coherencia regional, las cuestiones
With the
políticas de carácter
purpose
global.
of promoting global affairs.
La sesión que comenzaremos ahora
The
está
session that
compuesta de
we
los
begin
siguientes
now
módulos.
is made up in this following
Primero,
way.
luego de
First,
los saludos de bienvenida,
after the welcome
Claudia
greetings,
Brito, oficial de
Claudia
políticas, experta
Brito,
en género
Policy
y
Officer,
organización de
expert in gender,
instituciones de la
social,
FAO
and
para
institutional
América Latina
systems
y el
of
Caribe,
FAO for Latin America and the
presentará de forma
Caribbean,
muy breve
will
las
present in a
prioridades de
very
la
brief
FAO en
way
la
the
región
priorities of
sobre
FAO in the
brechas,
region
avances
on
y
gaps and
brechas y avances para
progress
el próximo bienio.
for the next biennium.
Luego tendremos una instancia del grupo de trabajo
Then we
a
have a
través de
work
preguntas
group session
generadoras de 1 hora y media de duración
through triggering
que
questions.
finalizarán
We
con la
will be
presentación
working
de los
one
trabajos
hour on
de cada
that,
grupo.
and we will finish with the
Y a continuación,
presentations of what each group
invitaremos
accomplished in that
nuevamente a
time.
Claudia Brito
Then we will
para
invite
compartir
Claudia
las reflexiones
Gabito
de
yet
FAO
again to
en los temas
share the reflections of
presentados,
FAO
fruto
based
de
on
lo que
what
hayamos
was
trabajado
presented
en la instancia
from
grupal.
what we worked on in the group
Y
session.
finalmente,
And
compartiremos unas
finally,
conclusiones
we
generales
will
y un
share
mensaje
some
de la
general
Alianza por la
conclusions
Soberanía
and a message
Alimentaria
from the Alliance
a
for
cargo
Food
de Perla
Sovereignty
Álvarez.
by Perla Alvarez.
Para iniciar este diálogo temático, ahora le brindo
To
la
begin
palabra
this dialogue,
a
I
la
would like to
señora
now give
Claudia
the
Brito,
floor to
oficial de
Madam
políticas,
Claudia Brito,
experta en género y
Policy
sistemas sociales
Officers,
institucionales de
expert
la FAO
in gender
para
and
América
social
Latina y el
systems
Caribe.
for FAO in Latin America
Adelante,
and the
Claudia.
Caribbean. Please, Claudia, go ahead.
Muchas gracias, María Carolina.
Thank you very much, Maria
Es
Carolina.
realmente un gusto estar acá con
It is
ustedes
really a
el día de
pleasure to
hoy
be here
en esta
with you today
consulta específica para
in
el tema
this
de género y
specific
derechos de las
dialogue
mujeres.
for gender
Quiero
and women
saludar a todas
rights.
las
So
organizaciones que
I
hoy
would like
nos
to greet all of
acompañan
the present
y también al
organizations
público y
today
a mis colegas
and
de la
also the
FAO aquí
audience and my
presentes,
colleagues from
Salud,
FAO here,
Marcela, que han
Claire,
sido
Marcela,
también
who have
aliadas
been
en este
also
trabajo
allies
de
in this
género y lo que hoy vamos a
work
comentar
related to
con
gender,
ustedes, ¿no?
and
A
what we're going to be
solicitud
commenting with you today.
de las
That is after the
organizaciones. Estamos muy
request of the
contentos de que este
organizations.
diálogo
We're
se
very
pudiera dar. Era un
happy
sueño que
that
teníamos
this
desde
dialogue
varias,
could take place. This is a
eh,
dream. We had
varias conferencias
several
regionales y qué bueno
regional
que
conferences
se puede hacer
ago, and it's
posible el día
brilliant
de
that
hoy,
it
¿no?
can be possible today.
María
So,
Carolina, yo quisiera
Maria
poder
Carolina,
compartir
I would like
mi
to be able to
pantalla, pero
share
no sé si
my
tengo
screen, but I don't know
permiso para hacer
if
eso,
I am
así es que les
allowed to
pediría
do
que
so.
me indiquen sí.
Therefore, I would like to ask you
Si
kindly
no,
if you
Marcela, tú
can
también la tienes,
see it. Otherwise, Marcela, you also
pero
have
si tú
it.
tienes permiso para
And
compartir, te
if
pediría
you have
compartirla.
authorization to share
Es una
that, I will ask
presentación
you to
breve
share that.
en el tiempo
It's a brief presentation
que me han
in the
solicitado
time I was requested.
y básicamente lo que queremos compartir con
Basically,
ustedes el día de hoy
what I
es
want to
cuáles
share
son
with
las
you
acciones
today is what are the
y los resultados
actions
de la FAO en
and the
relación
results of
con
FAO
los
related
esfuerzos que
to
hacemos para alcanzar la
the
igualdad de
efforts that we
género
do for reaching
en la
gender
región,
equality
sobre todo
in the region,
en el
especially
foco de los derechos de las
in the
mujeres, en
focus of
particular las mujeres
women's
rurales en
rights,
todas sus
particularly
diversidades, ¿no?
rural women in all of their diversity, indigenous women, Afro women, all of that, all of that machinery of different women we have in a region. And also noticing that many of them live in different intersections. Gaps don't only affect them because they're women, but because they're women, indigenous women, Afro women, or women who are in areas where poverty is a lot deeper in Latin America. So I did not want to stop mentioning or failing to mention some elements that could be useful for the discussion and the reflections that continue this afternoon related to the main gender gaps that we have in the region. And this information that I share with you has several sources, but of especially it has a source that I would like to leave here for you, which is the latest report by FAO on women in agri-food systems. This is a report that was launched last year, and it highlights the issue or the issues of high importance in terms of the situation of rural women in particular in our region and in the world, but also brought a lot of information to a region. So, what is the constant in Latin America? So, we have a region where food and nutritional sa- security affects women the most. I'm not going to dwell on that in particular or the numbers, but I just wanted to put the context right because the presentation is going to be available for you so you can look into the details of the numbers and everything related to the data, the information, and everything that the presentation has. So we have a context where food and nutritional insecurity affects malnutrition affects all of in all of these ways. Women in Latin America are mostly affected. This is 2022 data. We have a gap of 9.1 percentage points on food and nutritional insecurity for women compared to men in Latin America. So 57% of this gap is estimated that it could be attributed to inequalities in access to education, full-time job, employment, and the labor participation of women. It's not a minor thing. So the other way of malnutrition that has to do with overweight and obesity, in the case of obesity, we have data from 2016, where again, women are more affected by obesity in Latin America and the Caribbean. In the same way, as you know, the issue of domestic labor and non-remunerated or not paid care labor, which is fundamental in terms of the model of the necessary change model that is targeted on gender equality, we need and we suppose a look towards domestic labor and care labor because the impact this has on the GDP of our countries, in the economy of our countries, is not a minor thing. It's about 21% of the GDP of the Latin American countries have to do with domestic labor and non-paid care labor. So this is a gap that adds on to this multidimensional poverty that the UNDP was pointing out last year in a report they launched, where again we go back to understand poverty from multi-dimensions and with a greater impact on women and rural women. And on the other hand, we have all of these gaps in labor and more in work in general, understanding like care as labor, where matters such as how the pandemic affected the employment of women, understanding that more than 4 million women in the region have not been able to go back to work or to their full-time employment after losing their job during the pandemic. So that is another pandemic in a way. This is a pandemic of poverty, of the feminization of poverty, the feminization of food and nutritional security, feminization of the lack of time or time poverty by women, and also the feminization of the gap, of the labor gap, as we call it, where we know that women presently, globally, make about 82 cents per every dollar a man makes. So we see a number of gaps that articulate and weave together. So we make this hardcore inequality, especially in gender for Latin America and the Caribbean. So all of this effort, we need to look at this from the point of view of violence, especially patriarchal violence, all sorts of violence. But of course, there's a lot of violence that we need to stress particularly, which is the patriarchal violence, because it is directly related to this indicator on agricultural land. Only 30% of women living in rural areas are owners of agricultural land based on our last reports from last year. So in general, those lands are lower quality land. They have a lot of insecurity or very unsafe. And from there, we have all of the difficulties to access to technical assistance that they also have in the regions, and also everything related to training, to the very necessary things that for women in Latin America. So we can we can go to the next slide, please. So this is a very complex scenario. We stay in Latin America and the Caribbean with a scenario where starvation has a female face and so does poverty. So from FAO, we are working at different levels and with different partners, because this is not an issue that only FAO has to take on regarding all of the gaps that we have in Latin America and the Caribbean and everything that I mentioned already. But I did want to bring you a snapshot of some of the main results that we had in the last 2 years of work in our regional offices and in the Latin American countries, because I believe it is important that you can know in greater depth what are we doing from FAO, and also open a space for reflection related to what can we do in a more articulated, coordinated fashion, working together. What are those elements and what are those paths for communication that we need to strengthen and promote in Latin America? So, firstly, the issue of access to resources by women. We got, as you know, the SDGs. We have SDG number 5 as FAO. We have the mandate of being the custodians of two SDGs that are associated to the access to land by women, particularly 5A1 and 5A2. Well, some of the most interesting work that we did during the last biennium was to monitor 14 countries in the region in relation to this indicator and obtain very concrete information regarding what are the aspects, challenges, and what should we change in the countries in relation to the access to land by women. So that we did an analysis here, a legal analysis that gave us some very concrete recommendations for states and countries that were part of this monitoring process. And this is a process. This is one of the results that we want to have as a whole of Latin America. We want to monitor all of the region for by 2025. So this is ongoing work, and that is why I wanted to show you some of these results. So as you can also see this as a process of a strengthening of a regional agenda for rural women internally in FAO and also with partners. You are part of these partners, the civil society. So the work with members of parliament, that has been a very intense work that, where we have done a lot, very good quality work in the framework of the legislations, the regional legislations and the national legislations, especially in food and social security, guaranteeing that gender equality is part of the high-level decisions of parliaments. Issues of gender and women rights is part, as a key part, and a well-articulated part of all of these parliament efforts in this region, particularly with the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger. Not only there, but with Parla Sur, the Parla Americas, all of this work that is part of the work of political incidents in the regional offices. We are working in a very coordinated way with our teams here. So this can be a reality that the legislation and the policies, both regional and national, can respond to a gender transforming focus to benefit the situation of women and that change that is so needed in Latin America. So we have an interagency work effort as well. Last year we designed and we're in the process of implementing a plan of action of interagency plan of action with women and UNFA so we can reinforce the agenda of economic empowerment of women and also political empowerment as well as some work with other agencies such as the UNDP regarding publications and an effort with the civil society, which I'm going to refer to now. And also, and this is available to you already, we have the regional campaign Rural Women Holding Rights as advocacy movement of a high political and technical level that wants to have an incidence in the policies and programs at a country level. So with the civil society, we were working with during the last biennial in the support on Red Flag in a multi-stakeholder effort for the declaration of the rights of all of women and girls in all of Latin America and the Caribbean, the rural areas of those places. So this is a coordinated effort with the OAS uh, Commission of for Women, uh, and we're also adding Mercosur to this effort. What we want to do here is that this should become globalized, a declaration for the rights of women, where we will have a decennium that is dedicated worldwide to the care and the focus of women's rights all over the world in the rural areas. So this is work that is living at the present time, where we are now acting, and so we're still working on that, and we hope that in the spaces of the decision making and also in this process of consultation, we hope that also you can join this effort of declaration. So, on the other hand, we also have some important work of in the region, in the regional office for support of the countries, in the development in at least 10 countries for policies and initiatives that were targeting the rights of working women, agro-food systems, uh, uh, food and nutritional security, and also actions related in that framework of social protection with the care of women in the rural areas, because that is the challenge that we have with the systems of care. That now we're still discussing the level, the most national level, or the level from the point of view of the cities, and not going down from the systems of care to the rural world, which is one of the masters that for us eh, requires more attention now. But also, we were working in the making of a regional network of craftsmanship with Safe Cotton project. Maybe you've heard of it. And now we're working in an initiative for the creation of network of small fisher women in Latin America and the Caribbean, and all of this with some agreements with Aladis and strategic partners in the opening of markets, and all of these topics that for us are so important. Access to funding, and all of these key topics. Also, we have an effort of the development of regional events surrounding these matters. And during the last 2 years, we were also doing our yearly seminar for celebrating the International Day of Rural Women. And I wanted to point this out because it's very important that in all of these events and activities, we have a direct coordination with Lucas, specifically to guarantee the participation of the civil society organizations in these activities, and also to promote a space for care and active listening of the needs of the civil society in this framework, and how from FAO can we collaborate, connect, and do a webbed work, because these are not simple gaps, so we need to join efforts. Another important milestone last year, which I also think is good that you hear about, is that we could put gender focus in the proposal of the Sanselag plan. So this is a very important plan that is forsaken for the FNS um, um, in the region that it tries to discuss this matter. So this is another result that I wanted to share with you. So here are some publications, such as one that we got last year with the UNDP that was a study on the voices of rural women facing the multidimensional crisis, lessons learned on the impact of the pandemic. So I would like to invite you to check that document because it really uh, reviews the agenda that we have in FAO to try to promote and support the whole thing of women's rights. Let's continue.
Ahora bien, ¿cuál es la propuesta programática, digamos, el plan de trabajo de
So
la
what is the
FAO?
programmatic program of we have to give continuity to everything we present. But this year, we are in a process of strengthening our economic empowerment of women program with financing and an articulated technical support that we expect to discuss at another moment. We would be delighted to do it. I don't know if you can go into the next slide, please. This is a program that FAO designs in the framework of its gender policies. It is a special program for gender equality and empowerment of rural women, which sets forth the strategic objectives of FAO for a better life. But it also articulates other objectives of the organization in the sought out of the context of gender equality empowerment of rural women. So what is the focus of this program? The key aspects are economic empowerment of rural women, access to land and other productive resources, water, training, technical support, financing, certification, and opening markets. These are key. There's another project that we are developing at this moment in time, which is very much linked to biodiversity and climate change, which is, we hope, will be a spearheading Latin American program, also leadership and participation on decision making for rural women with our partners, and also seeking to impact the agro industry in the value chain, both in the forestry and non-forestry and agricultural areas focused on gender. The other aspect, which is also part of what we're doing, the social protection and inclusion, with a focus on special conditions for employment and comprehensive services for care in women in the rural area, and also efforts to strengthen disaggregated information per gender, and also analyzed in the incidence of public policies. Next, please. I'm almost concluding. So I just wanted to give you some snapshots of this. So this BL1 main program, we seek to have four major areas or sub-programs within this major program. One of them is technical training and standardization for governments to guarantee once again the complete exercise of rights of women in rural, indigenous, and youth. This is one of the major interests we have, and follow up on the same work with the parliaments, where decisions are made which are fundamental, will affect also the public policies of the nations and the implications these have at the territory level and the lives of women. The second one, and I would like to mention once again that we hope that we're able to find an agreement of collaboration with the different associations that are present here today. We're about to launch a training program in order to strengthen capacities of rural women in key aspects, leadership, political participation, productive areas, everything linked to biodiversity, climate change. We hope to have a pilot program in 3 countries, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and others, and we hope that we're able to expand it to other nations too. Honduras, I missed. The other aspect is a regional exchange of statistics and information, methodologies, policies, programs that seeks to find inter-agency involvement with an approach that involves all the information we have on statistics and other information in the region, and also all the methodological systems for decision makers, so that women can, in terms of the world in which they live in the rural context. We're also promoting communication at the regional level, which refers to a representation of the regional women with rights and other processes that we will conclude this year with a regional platform for exchange. What we seek to do is to see your voices reflected, your organizations reflected, and your perspectives and the role of rural women in agro food systems. And this is the last overhead. And so from FAO, there's an articulated effort which follows the work that we do at the national level, of course. And we're also greatly interested, and I want to set forth a reflection on 4 points that I would like you to consider today. I believe that we have enormous opportunities to strengthen the work that we have already developed with you. We believe that there is an important space in the framework of the platform we're going to launch, which has to do with incidents at a regional level. And we hope that each one of you, are able to make yours this incidents at a regional level, and to use it for the development and voicing these programs of women, rural women particularly, of course, which is the topic that unites us. It is also an aspect that we need to discuss, the development of these programs that we're carrying out today, and to find a path of opportunity and articulation at the regional level, but also at the national level. Another aspect which we consider very important that we could be able to discuss is this program that we are going to carry out, which has training. We hope 3,000 women are trained in the next 2 years, and we may be able to triplicate that figure with your support, of course. And we have to think about what we can do to strengthen our alliances. If we need a more permanent communication and consultation moment, do we need a plan, a roadmap that which is more concrete in nature? For example, in the agreements of the next conference, we are available as FAO to support you to achieve all these possibilities. And I will leave here with you these elements that I hope we can share deeper and with all the heartfelt participation. Thank you, Carolina, and everyone who is listening. Thank you very much, Claudia, for your presentation. All right. So next, we would like to invite you to begin the workspace in groups. For this, I would like to explain to you what the methodology will be. We will assign randomly a room. Each one of you will have a facilitator that will coordinate the groups and will take notes. And at the end of the group interaction, there will be a representative that will set forth in a general plenary of the results attained. We have 4 rooms, the main room and another 3. We would like to ask for those of you that speak English to please stay in the main room. And this will be the only room in which all the discussions will have simultaneous interpreting. Each room will work on the topic with gender gap as a topic, and all the ideas, the best nutrition, the best, better life, better environment, and so on. In the main room, we're going to talk about production. Whoever wants to stay on this topic, please don't go to the rooms that you have been assigned to. I hope I was clear with my indications. I will repeat again. Each one of you will be randomly assigned an invitation to a room. If you want to stay on the topic of production, do not accept the invitation and therefore stay in the main room. On the chat, we will provide you with a PowerPoint presentation that will help you to take notes and facilitate the presentation. There is a file in English and another one in Spanish. Each group will have to respond to the following questions. Don't worry about taking notes because, as I said just now, you will have the PowerPoint presentation with the questions, but just so that you know what the objective of each group is. The first question that you will be reflecting on is, to what extent have the regional priorities implemented by FAO contributed to better production, nutrition, environment, better life, and how this has affected women? What are the main gender gaps? What do you consider a priority for FAO to do in this regard? And lastly, what mechanism for participation, monitoring, and follow-up should be promoted? These would be the questions to be reflected upon. And you will be invited to the rooms at this moment in time.
Perfecto, ya pueden aceptar la invitación.
Hola, buenas tardes. Hola, hola, sí.
Carolina, aquí viene llegando Patricia, viene llegando Nemo.
No estoy sabiendo cómo resolver esto porque si podemos empezar a trabajar en este grupo, quedamos solamente 3 personas.
Sí, adelante, inicien con...
Go ahead with your group. I will check with the other rooms if there's somebody that would like to go to the main room. Very good. All right, let's begin then with the group. As I was saying, the main aspect that we need to reflect on is I would like you to take on the first question. To what extent have the regional priorities implemented by FAO contributed to better production and how it has affected to women? I would like you to participate, share your experiences, your appreciation, and what you think about this question. Thank you, Caro. I understand I have to change rooms. We would like you to stay here, Patricia. You're invited. I've been told that I have to go into Perla Alvarez. Okay, fine. To facilitate that room. Okay, I understand. But I don't know if someone can help me reach room 2. Room number 2.
Listo.
There you are.
Bien. Aparte de las personas que están haciendo.
All right. Given those that are interpreted, we have 2 people in this room, Elizabeth Arellano and Nemo Amaral, sorry. Is that right? Are you here?
No vamos a poder trabajar con esta modalidad. Me parece que
We won't be able to work with this modality. This technical modification has not allowed us to work in the 3 groups.
bien. Si hay alguna persona que está en este grupo que no sea
If there's
intérprete,
anyone in this group, beyond the interpreters, if you'd like, we can begin
comenzar, aunque seamos pocas, y después
discussing, even if we're just a few people, someone else can join us. Hello, Elizabeth Arellano from Mexico.
bienvenida,
Good,
Elizabeth.
good morning.
Déjame
Hello,
ver,
Elizabeth.
te lo agradezco.
Please, if you can straighten your camera, it would be very nice of you. We can't see you.
Pocas, al menos haremos
We
un
might be
esfuerzo por
few.
hacer esto.
We will make the effort. In reference to the first question you set forth, to date, the United Nations, FAO, it has been a referral in reference to the gender policies. We work to see what they see or think. But to date, in my organization, we have not participated with a program that have representatives. We have been participating in various opinions and parliamentary participation, but physical and real involvement with women up to where I have seen, there has been none.
Bueno, al menos en México, ¿eh? En otros países es diferente.
At least in Mexico and other countries is different.
No sé si
I
con
don't
esta
know if with this topic, shall we continue or what can we do about it? Well, because at the very least, in this current government, these budgets to support to the farms are given directly, and it does not include women directly. So populations of rural area in general, well, we don't have a gender distinction. So therefore, the programs and the secretary go farming development, maybe so Sembrando Vida or other state programs, but that are not particularly targeted.
Hola, Caro, ¿cómo van?
Hello, Cara, how do you do?
No estamos teniendo participación, Marcela, de ninguna otra
We
persona.
don't have any participation from anyone in the group except for Elizabeth and the other people are interpreters and technicians, so I don't think it is viable to continue with this group in this way. We have Elizabeth, Carmen, Felix.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Carmen. It's just that I was just following because I'm in a catering at the same time. So in terms of say like writing, but I know the English participants as it relates to numbers will be small, but we should have an input. So even though we are small in numbers, I still think that we can have a say and not just dissolve the English group. So we don't miss the opportunity that is given to us.
Bien, Carmen, disculpa.
Very well, Carmen. I'm very sorry. I thought even though we're few, even 3-4 people in the group, and it's the only group that can facilitate the participation of the English-speaking people, we will continue working in the group. So we hope to listen to your participation. My apologies.
As I said, I stopped because catering, I was busy in that, so I now take a pause to fully participate.
Sorry, could you repeat again because your
The
connection is
question,
very
what is it
bad.
that we are supposed to be? Okay, I have to do a pause because this is very important at this stage. So I'm asking, what is the question? What is it that we are supposed to respond to at this time? Because the Caribbean, the English speaking Caribbean cannot be like.
Estamos en la primera pregunta.
We are on the first question. To which extent the regional priorities implemented by FAO have contributed to a better production, nutrition, environment, better life, and how has this affected women? This is the question we are currently answering.
All right, so that's a good thing to leave the question. To what extent have the regional priorities implemented by FAO contributed to better production, nutrition, and environment? As it relates, and I'm speaking because I represent the president of the Caribbean Network of Rural Women Producers, CANRUP, the organization. And FAO has been working along with us in several areas, but as relates to, I'm speaking here as to the question, better production, is that we have been able to actually, through FAO, visit farms. FAO Caribbean chapters, not just our chapters, but in terms of country level, and provided for them technical training. In addition, we have been overseas where we actually had the opportunity to see other countries and what they are doing. For me, the last place that I went to with FAO, it was FAO and Percussor. And what I am really stirred up with, especially knowing that the age group of the members of CANRUP are above 50, the majority, is the shade house planting, the shaded planting. That shaded planting where it eliminates so much of the stooping and bending, but the production rate is faster using the pipelines, which is the technology that we can implement in the Caribbean to improve and also ensure continuous products. We are talking about farm products, not just for home, but for family. In addition, what I saw with that shaded farming is that a family can go into business. A family can go in. So we are looking at economic empowerment. And this first-hand experience came as a result of the exposure from FAO and POCOSO. FAO is also working with us as CANROP. They continue to work to see how they can fit into our work program so that they can better promote agriculture and fulfill the SDG goals, working along with us.
Permitted, I'd like to enhance what was said here by Carmen. I'm Gia Gaspar Taylor, Trinidad and Tobago, and we have been working along with CANROP. However, our focus has been on community gardens, working with our youth. We have quite a large percentage of young people working with us, and we would like, of course, to continue in that vein. So I just wanted to add to what Carmen said, and also to indicate that we are working with young people. We were fortunate to have had one of our young ladies attend the meeting that was held by FAO, the World Food Forum in Italy, and she continues to work online and is sharing that information with the other young people. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gia, for your contribution and for that addition. And I would also want to say that the focus, even in the opening discussion, for us should be more on the grant than loans. Because when you give women grant, you actually empower them, you empower the family. And also the issue that many access to land. We have persons with only short term and they have to pay. And so the continuity, we had an issue where we help a person a pot that they could have water, and but it was not their property, it was not their land. So access to land. And what's happening as a result, even coming out of our recent disasters, is the climate change has affected many of our farmers. Many, but they are very persistent in what they do because that's the main source of income. And until many persons, because we all consume food, realize cannot support all of our needs, and you need to invest in the local farmers, that which COVID brought out. We need to invest more in the local farmers so that they can be able to improve and quality, improve production at home, so save the foreign currency, foreign. For us, even since many of the things are not available, but it can be grown here. So that of the link with FAO will nation and for the Caribbean at large. Hoping that the other representative the organization will have a say. We sometimes in group.
I'm sorry, your connection is very choppy. If you could repeat that last point.
No, I was just encouraging the English speaker persons who are on, and it would depend on which organization that they're representing, to make use of this opportunity to say, the contribution of FAO towards the development, food and nutrition security.
Muchas gracias, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Carmen. So going back to the first question, if there's any other aspect anyone would like to contribute to in relation to how has these measurements affected, especially women. If there's any other question or reflection that we can do in terms of this question that has to do specifically with how the regional priorities of FAO have affected women, I would like to invite you to share some further reflections.
Bien, no hay ninguna otra aporte.
So if we don't have any more comments to question number 1, let's go to question number 2. We wrote the contributions of Carmen and colleague, the contribution of Gaspar. Anyone else? Very well then. Let's go on to the second question that we have. So we can reflect about what are the main gender gaps and what do we consider FAO should do on that? What are the main gender gaps? What do you consider a priority to FAO to do in this regard? That is the question. I would like to invite you to reflect on the main gender gaps. Main differences that we consider there are there between women, men, young women,
de las diversidades sexuales, en relación a la producción.
Reference to the production per se.
Then it will mean access to loans, access to the gaps that we have in the male farmers will easier get a loan than women farmers in the majority. The men are still in the majority. The gender we have in terms of land, we have genuine farmers, female farmers without land. So those are some gaps but as it relates to how FAO can help, it is really through government in terms of sitting with government in terms of policies and identifying the gaps and see what consideration governments can give to women farmers. So the women farmers, even though they may want to go commercial, they are limited. Gender gap, and here is where FAO can help, where we don't stay at the primary level with a crop. Whilst we might be growing tomatoes, then the technical assistance to show the community with it, or the group how to take that tomato, how can you extend the life by processing it. So we take it up the value chain so that person can get a higher value, and also it creates employment. So it's time that many of the rural women move from just the basic crop and extend it to value-added processing. So here's where FAO can assist.
Muchísimas gracias, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Carmen, for your input. Do we have any further input in that which relates to gender gaps and what priorities would be set forth for FAO? I would like to add that FAO is a referral in food production, and we want its presence more sustainable, more committed to the agricultural practice of women in farming, to be for their participation to be specific. It has to go more theoretical. Beyond that which theoretical or theory, let's say.
I was holding back, hoping that there would be other contributions from the English-speaking Caribbean. But I just wanted to add here that one of the areas that there are some challenges in is where the woman farmer have to get her produce to the market very early in the morning. And safety, the safety aspect here is one of the concerns here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know if it applies to the other Caribbean islands, but I do know that it is a concern, safety concern for women and girls having to get their produce to the market early in the morning. And then the safety aspect of returning home late nights. So this is something that I wanted to add to it.
Gia, that's an excellent contribution. And may I add, only this week the news showed that Sanders, one of the managers, when he discovered that his employee has to leave, one of them, the person who sells by the hotel, just a casual conversation says that she has to leave home so early because he was enjoying coming and have coffee, coming and have something to eat. But she said she has to leave her 8-year-old to take care of her 3-year-old. And what Sanders did recently in St. Lucia is to build actually a daycare center that employees or persons around that area who sells, they can bring their children and they are there from 7 to 6. So that was a recent contribution for vendors within the area.
Excellent. I'm wondering whether or not there would be an organization that would take that into consideration in Trinidad and Tobago. Perhaps we can advocate.
Muchas gracias. Yeah.
Hola.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Hola, soy Félix de Bolivia.
I'm Felix from Bolivia, from the north of Potosí. Welcome, Felix. We're all ears. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to participate in these activities. We're very interested. We want to hear a little bit about this issues of gender. We are an NGO at the local, at the national level. And we have seen the work of FAO, and we have participated in a project. And also, we have worked with partners in a government program. This is a topic that we're very interested in, and we want to share our experiences. Going to the question, on this point, I believe that those of us that work in NGOs and also, in this case, FAO, in Bolivia, there are various standards or norms that support gender aspects that are not complied with. And this is where we propose, for example, aspects related to training, to adequate our schedules to the women's schedules or programs so they can have someone that can help them in their communities. For example, on a Saturday or on a Sunday, or sometimes on a holiday, which means that there is a change of in the technical team on the NGO side, because our function is to train them. The technical team must be prepared to assume that in sometimes they will have to be training given these days, because it has to do with institutional policy.
Sabemos que existen, por ejemplo, ley de trabajo.
We know that there's a law of employment, and there are holidays and weekends and so on. As an institution, we promote employment policies. And in that which relates to gender gap, there are enormous gaps, particularly in the culture. It is quite difficult to understand in certain moments. It has to come, when talking about gender, we have to go to the locations where we see schools or areas that allow us to work on this strengthening gender focus, because it will eventually develop into youth. I heard, for example, in social network, for example, that it is seen that youth have changed enormously, but those who changed were the parents. It changes from generation to generation. Chauvinism is an issue. We have to work from the schools from a young age. The projects that we execute should have a component of beginning with a conversation, a talk of an hour or so in schools, so that this is contained within society to reduce this gap. That's where women issues could be improved. I would like FAO to take food as a vertical aspect. There are so many aspects of life that have to do with women. There isn't a real focus on the food production and the entire chain and all the elements involved. And FAO has an enormous amount of insight, and we would be welcoming that insight.
Muchas gracias. ¿Tenemos alguna otra participación? Ya han participado todas las
Thank you
personas.
very much. Are there any further comments? Any other reflections that come to mind that you have expressed? If there aren't any further comments, we will go to the last one. What the last question is, sorry. I'm hearing an echo. I don't know if everyone can hear that echo. I can hear you. Yeah. So the last question is, Carolina, go ahead, please speak. Please continue with the question. The thing is, I hear an echo, which is on top of what I'm saying. Not everybody's hearing it, or are you all hearing it? It seems to be a technical issue. I will continue, even if I have this echo present, sorry. We can't hear anything. At least from my screen, I don't hear anything. Maybe I can help you with the last question. The last question is, what participation, monitoring, and follow-up mechanisms would need to be promoted?
I think continued capacity building and training to develop their products that are being promoted by the women along the value chain, as well as one of the critical areas of that of funding. I think Carmen made mention of it earlier on, where instead of loans, we should look at grants, even if it is a small grant, because we do know that we encourage our women to start small, and therefore sometimes just a small grant. But in order to be able to work on that, they need to have the capacity building and the training to help them to maneuver in the new arena of being able to have some type of record keeping with the grant that they receive, so that they can continue to develop that grant and grow more where they would not necessarily need a grant for survival.
Disculpa, recién puedo volver. No he estado escuchando. Tenía un eco.
Sorry, I had an echo that was interfering with my interventions. Carolina, please, we were listening to the contributions by different participants. What do you believe are the most important mechanism for participation, monitoring, and follow-up? Hello, hello, hello. I believe that we should have focal groups in such a way that they may be the ones to replicate them, whatever topics are being worked upon, the discussions that we can create, focal groups that are identified and monitored by communications like WhatsApp tools through a web page and so on. from that standpoint, you could have life experiences, testimonials to set forth the changes that have been undergone that can be verified. I believe that is a path that are, for example, per sector. It could be in Bolivia and Peru. There are smaller aspects. We work like this. We have groups of women that we have identified by socializing projects, setting forth projects. We always have the participation of women. And this is how we do it. We also do monitoring in reference to the compliance with standards. Many countries have standards. In Bolivia, public offices, for example, to be counsel, it states that there has to be gender parity and alternating genders, and we have to monitor that, whether it's complied with or not, and if it's not complied with, to generate recommendations and so on. Thank you very much, Felix. Anyone else have an input that you would like to add? I would like that this link was stronger with organization of food producing women organizations. Would you like to share a little bit more about that? How do you imagine that link to be? How would you strengthen it to ensure the participation, monitoring, and follow-up of these? There are many changes that have taken place in the rural environment, and many of them have been implemented and forced by governments and international policies when there is a real participation and they approach groups led by women. We all see a fair viewpoint. And when there is a strong presence of an organization of this stature, as FAO, people start taking it seriously. If not, it just sounds like a discourse, and the ideas are just in the air. That's what I refer to. We know that FAO and the UN work at a world level, and they generate a great amount of change. So this is where the dissemination of information, but more presence, more on-site work.
All right, I support that comment in terms of farmer organization being on the forum. I invited all 10 of our chapters. I'm just seeing representation from Trinidad and here St. Lucia. But I guess the timing, so I can't make excuse. But I think one of the areas that we can do for participation and monitoring and follow-up consideration can be given to a revolving fund. Whereas revolving fund is given to an organization and is managed by them as a result after training, as Chair said, capacity building. And so the members, the persons from that organization can get money to borrow to the organization at very minimal in from the organization to monitor the growth. So it's here I need X amount of seedlings. I don't have the funds. I have just enough to prepare the land. But then from the revolving fund, I can get enough finance to get the seedlings, to put it on a structure, to do X, Y, Z, because you know that these are real committed workers who will refund you. And you work out a payment system based on an individual basis. So to me, that's one that can be implemented and monitored and followed up to the organization. And at any time, FAO can also ask for a report, or you can be submitting a report on a yearly basis, so you see what's happening with that fund.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Carmen.
¿Se les ocurren algunas otras formas de participación o monitoreo?
Any other form of participation, monitoring, or other mechanisms that we can do from the civil society that can come to mind so we can support the priorities?
Para nuestra región.
For some Caribbean areas, some places, they need something simple as preparation of a basic site, a shaded area instead of being in the sun. Maybe a storeroom with some cold storage to have like farmers market. You have the crop, you don't have the storage. So some persons on a daily basis, you bring it out, you don't have at your home the type of storage that you need. But in some communities, you can actually build the storage, a marketplace. So people within the community know on particular days they can come, and there is also storage, be it a poultry vendor, be it if it is just your crops, that it's under the right conditions so that when you come to market it, it's quality that you're marketing.
Bien, muchas gracias, Carmen. Nos quedan unos minutos
Thank you very
más.
much, Carmen. We have a couple more minutes for some reflections related to how can we from civil society and what mechanisms do we believe we can generate for greater participation to monitor the actions that are being carried out and the follow-up of the actions that are being done from FAO. It would be good that FAO would take the participation, the production of food at a small scale that many women are already doing, would support them further or guide them or also make their work known.
I support that, make their work known and make their product known because there are, especially we talk about rural women, there are some cultural items, indigenous items that if they in terms of training, if they get that type of assistance right at their location, what is indigenous can be in the capital, can be marketed at the out of the indigenous area. And that will also will do capacity building. We have a system, and maybe I can apply a Guyana system. There's a system in Guyana where most of the women from Canada, they are in rural areas. But through ICA, they have an office just below ICA's office, the International Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, Georgetown. So the members will send out the product from the interior, from the rural areas, and they have a paid person that will go and collect and market it. They are also, that same person will distribute also. There is a marketing board, a national marketing corporation that they will distribute, they will market, and the record keeping is there. And so as the products are sold, this person is responsible for setting up the finances. So they are able to pay. So the things are coming down on a frequent basis from the interior to the capital. So a system like that works in terms of, and to bring it down from the interior to the market is it's quality, because here it's going on supermarket shelf. So we're talking about quality packaging, quality labeling, because it is at in Georgetown, the capital, and beyond. So I support that in terms of the products, making the products known.
Muchas gracias, Carmen. Tenemos muchos aportes
Thank you very
interesantes.
much. We have a lot of great contributions in terms of the priorities that we consider FAO needs to put or consider.
Nos quedan 5 minutos más,
We have 5 minutes left.
un poquito menos ahora. ¿Hay algún otro aporte más que podamos hacer? ¿Alguna reflexión que nos haya quedado?
So we have a reflection maybe here.
¿Algún otro comentario que quieran hacer?
Any other comment you would like to make?
Preguntas que hicimos.
Not included in the questions we did.
Nos quedaría decidir quién
So what we need to decide now is who is going to present the conclusions from our group. So Marcela has been taking some notes in the presentation.
¿Hay alguna persona que se propone para hacer
Anyone that is volunteering to the presentation, the general plenary?
I'm cooking. Gia, you want to take it on? I'm cooking. Gia, you need to. I know you can represent well.
No, no alcancé a comprender, Carmen. Los apuntes
How was
están
that, Carmen? The notes are in Spanish. I don't know if...
I said I'm hoping that Gia hears. Because I'm cooking, I have a timeline to get something done. So I'm asking Gia. So let us represent.
No sé, Caro, si tú podrías ser nuestro exponente.
I don't know, maybe Caro, you can present.
Yo podría, pero si alguna otra persona del grupo
I
quiere
could,
hacerlo,
but if anyone
creo que
else
podría
would,
que sería mejor. Pero puedo
I
ser
believe it would
ponente
be
si nadie
better.
se
But I
ofrece.
can present if nobody is
Te tomo
offering.
Marcela para guiar la presentación.
So here we have the,
Grupo que es el grupo 1,
this is group number
enfocado
1.
en
We were
la
focused on
mejora de producción.
better production.
Bueno, ha sido un gusto compartir.
It has been a pleasure to share with you, even though we had a lot of mishaps, but in the end we managed to comply with our objectives. So now we're going to start having everyone from the other groups, because now we are on time for the final plenary session.
Caro, te voy a enviar por correo entonces los apuntes, por si quieres complementar.
Caro, I'm going to send you my notes over email so you can have your presentation during the plenary. Okay. Thank you very much.
Nos queda un minuto, pero bueno, igual que Carolina, agradecerles que hayan participado en
We have 1 minute left, but just like Carolina, I would like to thank you for participating in this group. So the rest of the participants can come to the main room. I don't know, Caro, as we comment a bit further on what the next stage is going to be like.
Sí, podemos comentarlo.
Yeah, we can comment that.
Tenemos una instancia ahora de presentación.
We have a chance for presentations now for the groups. From 4 to 4:30, we have half an hour. And then we will wrap up with and we will share the visions of Claudia Brito based on the contributions and discussions that the groups have had.
Esos son los momentos que siguen.
Those are the moments that are coming.
Ya van a empezar a ingresar a la sala principal en un par de segundos al resto de los participantes. Vamos, Caro, entonces ya están casi todos acá en la sala principal.
So since everyone's already in the main room,
Estamos todos y todas aquí.
so we are all here now, back again. We'd like to welcome you back to all of the groups. And we would like to invite you now. We're going to have a moment of plenaries where each representative will present the conclusion that each group has had.
Vamos a comenzar. Si quieren, les propongo que comencemos.
We'll now begin. I would like to propose from back to front. The group that had better life, please begin your presentation. Number 3, that would be group number 3. I'm the delegate. Will you help me with the presentation, please? We can hear you, Nancy. I just wanted that you could share the presentation. I am from Ecuador, and I am from Equatorian Amazonia. If my colleague could share the presentation, please. Can you give access to Luz Elena, who has the presentation, please? The technical team, can you please provide access? Would it be possible? They have access. Please share. Just use a green share screen button at the bottom of your page. Luz Helena, please share.
Carolina, podemos ir quizás con otro grupo mientras.
Perfecto, entonces vamos con el grupo.
Carolina, let's begin with group number 2. It seems the group number 3 is having some trouble. Group number 2, Guadalupe is going to present without PowerPoint. I'm going to read. Guadalupe, can you please turn on your camera, please? I don't have a camera on my computer. I'm on my phone. That's all right. Go ahead. And the first topic, what are the priorities? And how FAO has been involved in the success of women. To have opportunities, you have to promote common goals as to have resources for production, because agrotoxins is very damaging for the soil and families. We have a diseased area because of intoxication. It's important to have public policies that are comprehensive to tackle these aspects. And we also have aspects of community costs. It was said that in some countries, there is a promotion or encouragement of national family agricultural communities where gender issues have been presented in regional conferences. And cross section interests which are being developed and implemented or communicated at the local, regional, and governmental levels. The second question, her voice is very cut off, so I'm trying to summarize what she's saying. There are topics. Is it vital for the production? In the case of, it was spoken, the example of Colombia. We have serious problems hearing Guadalupe. It's very cut off. I'm going to connect through some other channels so you can better hear me. No, if it's possible, Guadalupe or somebody else from your team might be able to communicate or continue sharing the reflections of this group. If Guadalupe has a problem with connectivity, is there somebody else in the group that might be able? Laura, Alejandra was taking up the aspects of question 2, which refers to how FAO could be involved in as women in areas of nutrition. We discussed was very interesting because the group positioned that in order to have a good nutrition, you need to have care, production, and access to our land, and women have the right to access land. And there's an interconnection between nutrition, land access, and production. Therefore, there were very important concerns, agro industries and how they're impacting, um, stimulate local markets, the control of monocrops and transgenics, because this refers to the fact that it's affecting production manners as a community in matters of health. There were also impacts, and we also it was also very interesting to set forth that there is a human rights framework. There is a farmers' human rights framework, and there should be a declaration, an international human rights, where it is referred to agricultural and nutrition should be a reality in these and um, areas of agricultural production. So what mechanisms can we promote for the participation, monitoring, and positioning? It was discussed that this matter related to one is to serve how the large companies are affecting and the mega projects are affecting the local farmers. That's one concern. And training the population, because many companies that were in this group are working at a community level, and therefore they refer to the significance of continue training, promote alliances with different areas to respond to this issue, with the entrepreneurship, with mayorships, and do continue doing research, and that women are consistently involved. And a mechanism that FAO could promote visiting countries to see how follow-up is taking place as far as human rights, how the human right to food is being developed in the territories and nations. That's what I could provide you with as far as feedback. Thank you. Thank you so much, Claudia. I'm connected now. Now I was able to put the camera and also the phone and audio, but I believe Laura did a very good summary. Since I took a written note, I will transcribe everything and I will send it very well organized so you can have it. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you, Guadalupe. Okay. Now, let's see if we are able to listen to group 3 that we were awaiting. Nancy, are you there? It's possible. Luz Elena is going to share her screen. Thank you. So we are the group of room 3, and this is the question. You can hear me, right?
Te escuchamos.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. All right. If the regional priorities implemented by FAO, how have they contributed to a better life and how this has affected women? A better production, nutrition, environment, and better life. How has this affected women? Women inclusion that live in rural areas has to become a reality to promote empowerment and progress in equity through health, education, employment, inclusion, production systems, and access to working property, credits, and financial resources, social resources. In addition, establishing measures that will allow tasks that have to be developed at home or homework and care would not be an obstacle on achieving this empowerment. These are replicated in various areas. We have done this because we have to differentiate the gender gap between women in urban centers and women in rural sectors because there are different locations and different realities. We have also believed that it's important to promote connectivity and technological access here towards women in various scenarios because we realize that rural families led by women, their technological access, there might be one phone and it is the same phone for the mother, the children's homework. And so it's a limitation to access information. Computers are rarely owned by families in the rural areas. That's as a response to the first question. And we will continue with the second question. The second questions, what are the main gender gaps? What do you consider a priority for FAO to do about it? In these gaps, we have seen the care system, which is always the woman that leads this task. It's a role that has been generated and given to women for generations. There has to be an active participation of others in these tasks because it is difficult for women to do this. Who cares for the elderly? Who cares for the children at home? And this is a limitation for women to participate in these activities. There are no leadership roles for women. This also um, exacerbates the gap. Even in political discourse, the women are not there. How do women are conditioned by their partners, by the family themselves to exit the home. The decision-making process is also, it's all interconnected. There has to be a comprehensive empowerment for women, not only in the economic aspect, leadership aspects, in the participation, in the access to education, as we had mentioned before, it's quite limited when referring to women. Because we're in rural areas, it is even further away to access in the rural environment during harvest. We have to consider the tasks that women carry. I have my own experience. Harvests are done by women, no matter what product. In our case, it's cacao. The pods are very far away, whether trucks stop to charge or to load, it's very heavy. We need sometimes the support of men. The comment is, well, you want equality, but you don't progress because you need us anyway. And this is a reality in the rural arena. Let's say, from our standpoint, we propose that the rural gap, there should be better conditions, better paths, roads for trucks to approach the different points of loading. There should be better safe paths or roads during the harvest. When we have to bring products from the field or from the rural area to the city, there has to be trucks and transportation systems. There has to be a support, intergenerational support to share knowledge, because sometimes knowledge is left with us and are not transmitted to new generations. We should not leave this, in the case of seedlings, for example, or ancestral cultural developments. Many times we lose and miss out on these new habits, culture. In the case of seeds, of course, this is fundamental. The next one. And the next question is, what participation, monitoring, follow-up mechanisms would you need to promote? In the first one, we consider it's very important to care for children while women are participating in training and capacity building on different topics, because this is a limiting factor. We don't have women participating because women limit themselves because they cannot go with their children. If I take the children do not let me speak. Or who do I leave them with if I want to train? So it is fundamental to have alternative aspects so that women are cared for, while women have certainty that their children are going to be well cared for, fed, and while mothers or women are trained. Promote economic and financial measures which will allow women to participate. It goes linked to the previous one. We need resources. And therefore, we need, the institution needs to foresee that. Who's going to care for them? The tools that are required to promote an adequate care for our children, of the children according to their age differences. There should be alliances between the organizations and institutions that are close by, or those that can be a part of this process so that they can work on these work and support. Government should also implement reforms that will allow for equanimous developments. This is an incidence that are important in territories that we need to promote. We need to also promote and support the new reforms to progress in equality with equal environment, because we need to understand what equality and being equal means. There's no difference. No, you have to do the same as this other person. There is a struggle there that is evident. I don't know if any of my colleagues would like to compliment, and thank you for the time you have allotted me. I just wanted to mention at least what was discussed. We cannot talk about equality without equanimous understandings. In order to reach equalness, we need to understand equality. And it's not a minor topic in the exercise of women participation. Understood. There has to be equal and fair distribution in order to install this as part of the discussion.
Thank you very much. Anyone wanted to say something from that group? Not all good over here. What was just said, basically, just that. So now we have the group of Better Nutrition, Better Life. Now we would like to invite you to share in this plenary session the group that is group number 1, the one that had environment. Hello, I'm gonna try to share my screen. Please don't take notes on these PowerPoints. Sorry, I didn't take notes on this PowerPoint, so ask the partners on the table to please support me by adding more of what we were talking about during this table. In terms of regional priorities, The first observation is that civil society organizations, local and community organizations, indigenous organizations, we do not know policies and programs by FAO. At a level of organizations, we don't have a lot of knowledge of that. Most of these, well, the programs should have a link with the state on occasion. So I don't know all the contents, but most of them, they are, it's the same as the state, the political part that is used for this situation. So regarding organization that are very well informed, they were talking about the plan of action for gender and also for indigenous people. However, they mentioned that these are very narrowed down. So we don't have a lot of visions, a lot of context here to complement this that will allow us to know in a better way and also apply or implement in a better way these policies or these programs in particular. Which we also observe here is by not knowing these proposals that we have from FAO, we are at a regional level very much delayed in things of climate change. So we are living the consequence of the climate crisis in a very strong way, but we also have not done national queries on the priorities of FAO. Not the priorities or what has been implemented for these issues that we checked today. And also, roughly speaking, I also didn't finish to review everything we saw, but I'll try to complement this as well. What are the main gender gaps? We matched on what we talked regarding the first part of this session, and we added some things as well. In general, these are issues of access to rights, right to health, right to life and the territory, the political participation, care, education, safety, work. We also talked about what are the risks in the defense of the territory that also exist. Well, there is an intrusion of organized crime here, not only in matters related to what we already knew, but in several other aspects, including the land and territory, but also in the care for the environment. So we also acknowledge that just these topics help us understand how is it that we see land and territory as a consumer good, far from the perspectives that we have in the farmers movement, the rural movement, and the indigenous movement. So some of the priorities that we mentioned here is that firstly, by not having knowledge of programs, etc., we also need some spaces for sharing experiences, experiences that other organizations have had. The possibility of sharing these will support us. Particularly speaking, there was a comment regarding access to water technology and how we as women don't have access to spaces to get to know and have a possibility of having exam technologies in terms of water technology. How do we use water for human consumption and how do we use this for production? And how everything that has to do with what pollutes, what damages, is not only damaging us, but is also damaging a Mother Earth and the other way around. So in this sense, between civil society organizations and communities, but among also the programs, policies, and mechanisms of FAO and civil society organization for the development of proposals of intercultural, intergenerational, and intersectional policies. And also recommendation to the states to increase that budget they're intended for producing, farming, indigenous and rural women to mention some topics that they have to do with political participation, with issues of production and that are directed for women that are sustaining agri-food systems. And also, this has to do with the first theme that presented here for creating policies for care in the agri-food systems. Just to make this a priority, issues that have to do with inclusiveness, knowing the experiences, consumer efforts, promote the participation of rural women, indigenous producers. From these perspectives, acknowledging the intersectionality of these and that we have a possibility that FAO will explain to us how's the organizational chart here and who is in charge of what here, so we can have the channels, the more direct links to serve certain topics, so we can do joint work and recover the link within the intermediate organizations, and especially as this is a call for attention. I don't know if we can call it that, but it is like a recommendations to add political will. So we acknowledge that some of the deficiencies also have to do with political will of the states for the implementation of plans and programs of policy in general, particularly focus on environmental topics. And an important topic here is that also has to do with recommendations and that the laws we have in our states and our countries does not defend to those that we protect the land, and that puts our life at risk, but also the life of the territory. So then, within the last question that has to do with the mechanism for participation, monitoring, and follow-up, it's mainly budget issues. Try to target a budget for the participation towards exam mechanisms for the policy and the plan, monitoring of the policies, focus on a healthy environment, and also recommendations regarding the safety of our territories. We were seeing that also it is very risky that in environmental topics and the defense of the territory topics that our comrades are being murdered. There's even a term that we wanted to make it a legal term, like it's called ecofeminicide, that when women are defending rivers or forests, women are being murdered. So these are topics that have to do with safety, care, work, health, that our own land is killing us, and therefore, in that sense as well, we should check these mechanisms for follow-up. So also from the perspective of organizations of the civil society, where we have the indigenous farm movement, rural women movement, we want to make an analysis from intersectional perspective, gender perspective, intercultural, intergenerational. And I'm missing one thing: training and education programs in affairs that have to do with not only environment, but also food as well, because of course this is all linked. I don't know if I'm missing some of the proposals that you have shared. So you can maybe give me a hand if I'm forgetting something. Also, facilitation of processes for the management and governance over territory. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patricia. Very well, then now we're going to be closing the plenary, sharing the results of group number 1. That was the smallest group, but not for that with any less participation and commitment by those who were there. I'm gonna be sharing my screen now. Very well then. Question number one, the regional practice implemented by FAO to better production and how has this affected women? Question. These are the discussions we had in our group, and we have, well, FAO has been a reference, but in some organizations it hasn't had a direct participation. We observed there were programs that were developing in that area of farming development regarding production, but that were not focused on gender, particularly speaking. There was no direction of the farming programs targeting particularly women and the uh, minorities, sexual minorities. In other organizations, we also had where we did have managerial collaboration with FAO. We had technologies that have worked for the economic empowerment and that collaborated with the contribution to reach the SDG. In that sense, we value the participation and the possibility of knowing the experiences of production in other countries. Everything developed by FAO that had been able to improve the productive possibilities, particularly speaking the Caribbean countries where we had this collaboration. And we also discussed, as well as in other groups, the relationship between climate change and how these had affected the production of agriculture, especially the small producers, and that this, in a way, also affects, to a greater extent, women. What are the main gender gaps here that we consider in a group? And what do we consider to be a priority to be done by FAO on this? We consider that mainly we have a difficulty that is seen here related to there's a very meaningful gender gap, which is the access to credit. Men always have more possibilities to access credit, being women that have the greater difficulty, just like access to land and property. In this case, we also consider that FAO could help with policies, it could help by promoting public policies that could progress in a transformative way related to these gender gaps that we consider to be key. Just like we consider that a gender gap that we have here is the trading of products, where it is a lot harder many times for women to have access to technical assistance, and that FAO should also support with technical assistance here related to the possibility for trading. Another key aspect here that we consider to be necessary here in the discussions of our group is the importance of strengthening the creation of added value in the raw materials, whereas also to have some technical assistance, and that FAO, it should become a reference and it should be committed in the agricultural practice of women and the sexual minorities beyond theory. When we reflected about this topic, we said that even though it was a very important reference related to production and food, the information spread of FAO, many times we have a distance between the preparation, the information, how this information is accessed, and how this becomes practiced in the life and day-to-day experiences of rural women. Some aspects that we see to be a gap that affect us especially is safety. Women need to move very early to go sell their products to the market, and often they arrive back very late. And at those times, their safety is affected and they are exposed to multiple dangers. And it's important that they consider that what are the policies that need to be promoted for women not to be exposed to dangers, and in other groups we have talked about this as well. An issue that was also considered to be important is related gender gaps, is the fact of having spaces for care, such as daycare, so women can work, such as the markets and other spaces for trading. And then again, we have the same problem where we have spoken in other groups that there's a great difficulty of the policies of care for rural women. A recommendation also that they consider to be important to facilitate the access to information and training of women is that the training should be suitable to the free time that women have. So, so we require policies that will accompany these trainings, and also the importance of this to generate transformative practices in terms of gender. We also need training, and the training should be guided from schools because gender equality and women's and youth rights need to be learned from an early age, and therefore it's important to promote educational policies. Another of the reflection of a group is related to the importance that FAO considers the invitation vertically. We should consider the whole process from production to consumption, so they can strengthen the actions at all stages of the chain. And related to other actions that are priority to be done by FAO, we also consider that it would be necessary to promote. Give me a moment, missing this. So we can see proposals that can promote and spread the work that women do respecting their culture. So women can have a great role to play in production, but many times the main role and the products that they do and the production they do doesn't have any sort of promotion. It's not just spread, and it's not seen in that aspect of the production that is done, and that we need policies that promote this and that can be known and spread in greater aspects. And lastly, we're talking about the mechanisms for participation, monitoring, and follow-up that will be necessary to promote. We discussed several topics related to the importance of the strengthening of the capacity so women can add value to the products, administration, accounting, among others, and the particular funding for women. This is also fundamental to have mechanisms to facilitate the funding, but also how can we achieve a greater mechanism for participation monitoring of the FAO actions? We consider to be important to do focal points that do monitoring through networks and web platforms. Related to that link of the women's organizations for food production, this is a key element to try to do greater mechanisms for participation, monitoring, and follow-up. There should be a greater link between FAO and the food producing women's organizations, and this is one of the key topics that we consider to be necessary to favor a greater deepening of the areas between FAO and the women organizations.
Propuesta que se planteó es la posibilidad de tener fondos recurrentes que las organizaciones le permitan monitorear los avances que se van logrando.
Recurring funds should be available for these organizations that would allow for monitoring and how the actions impact for policies that are developed in the territory. Okay. And then we would conclude the presentations of this group. based on the notes I've taken, and I would like to invite the colleagues that were in group one, or if there are any additional input that you would like to provide so that you can share it at this moment in time. Any other topic you would like to set forth, or else we will conclude this portion of this meeting? Thank you all for the reflections we have shared. Thank you so much for your input. And we will conclude with the participation that will be systematized, and they will be presented in civil society organizations, and we will generate a document so that all the people that have been participating in this moment, you will have the input of all the ideas and thoughts that have been set forth in this meeting. To continue, we will open the floor for Madame Brito, who will be giving us feedback. You have approximately 10 minutes, and then we will let you know when there's 1 minute left. We have some time. You could take an additional 10 minutes if I watch watch closest. Thank you, Maria Carolina, for this very important wealth of brainstorming that we have seen today. I'm very happy based on what I've observed, the results attained by the feedback that have been set forth. It is quite aligned to the work that we have been doing. So what we have ahead of us is how to better articulate ourselves in such a way, in a more permanent level, to find out a follow-up mechanism as set forth here with you, with the organizations, in addition to other organizations that we work with, right? To broaden the space of participation, which is what we have been developing with FAO. I would like to mention some topic that resounded based on what was set forth by all of you in in the groups. Concretely, what we have is possibilities of carrying out a more coordinated task. And also, in view of the next conference, I know that we will have various recommendations that will be set forth in the conference. And I think it's very important that we're able to show how there is an alignment on topic matters. It is important that gaps in the region, we have an agreement that these are the gaps that we are undergoing, food insecurity, in the poverty, rural vulnerability, security, the need to access for women to core resources, water, land. And when I talk about land in the broad sense of it all, not only in productive, but also as a compendium of needs that are part of better living in territories on behalf of women, of course. And this is a key aspect. I think another topic that was set forth, and I'm very happy to hear it, I listen to aspects that are care. I think it's a critical node that needs to be untangled, which of course has to do with employment, a broader aspect linked to employment in the case of women in the rural area, the freeing of time for women to be able to dedicate it to other activities, so many activities upon which they would like to develop into their lives. And I think this is fundamental. By the same token, to impact public policy. And I would like to underline an aspect here because we have a very broad task in the region when we talk about public policies, and the FAO has been involved in the last 8 to 9 years in most of the processes of gender policies for agro food industry in cases related to gender policies to impact the agro industry, and also specific policies on nutritional policies. There has been work that has been um, uh, aligned in public policies, and it's not, but it does not suffice because many of these policies, the implementation continues to be a challenge in the region. There are countries like Uruguay, Colombia. We're working with the Dominican Republic and Colombia. In Colombia, the modifications of the law for rural women in rural development need to be developed in the agro industry. And in Dominican Republic, we're working with topics related to the design of a specific policy for the sector in aspects of gender with a vision of an agro-food system. All the efforts in Paraguay, in Mexico, in Chile, in Uruguay, all these tasks that we have worked extensively on land change in legislation at the national level in Guatemala and other countries. I believe that it is a fundamental and critical that we become more involved because at the country level, there are levels of participation of women in the construction of public policies of this profiling character. And there's a great deal of learning process where we can base the exchange of experiences that you have also shown to be one of the priority aspects of high interest in that which relates to what we are promoting at FAO on this matter. Also in aspects of accredits, access, land, specialized technology for producing women. And from that standpoint, the productive inclusion, which are all aspects that you have mentioned, which provide capacity for women in the region, are fundamental for us. And to set forth the aspect of innovation, we find it is fundamental that we provide acceleration in this aspect for the next biennium, which we will be working jointly, and that which relates to key technologies like hydro technology for water access. The climate change as a topic in general was another aspect that was referred to. From a perspective, I'm really delighted. As United Nations, we're talking about climate justice, the rights that we have as people to live in an environment that is adequate. And above all the gaps that exist there are perpetuated in the case of women. And how can we find solutions that are proactive, effective to achieve the change that we need to see? Another aspect that you refer to here, which I believe is fundamental, refers to establishing connections to what's happening at the regional level in that which relates to women's rights. I want to mention three aspects. As you know, we have various mechanisms as I see down to follow up on the situation of women, rural women, 14, chapter 14. And also in this year, I would like to make FAO available from that standpoint, and we might be able to articulate some aspects there. We're assessing Beijing. It's done every 5 years, as you know. We already had a first meeting with the ECLAC so that we could find a manner in which we have some activity of to recognize and have a view in Beijing for rural women in areas of agro development and producing. We have to analyze Beijing in that which relates to rural women and their involvement. I think we also have opportunities in reference to not only to the General Conference of FAO, but also with the Regional Conference on Women for Latin America and the Caribbean. As you know, in the last consensus of Buenos Aires, it is based on the follow-up of policies and care systems, which is central, that we want to be more and more in the aspect of coverage that you mentioned here, which was a critical aspect. I believe there are many opportunities that could be developed from this first consultation we're carrying out today. I would like to achieve a certain minimum agreement where we could have a further meeting to the conference itself so that we're able to continue articulating this work and continue finding a way to continue dialoguing, discussing, to have closeness. And from FAO, we are in complete availability to do that. And we are completely convinced that that is our role as an agency for the United Nations. We've been delighted. Thank you very much. I am here to support you and making myself available to this wonderful group. As you know, we are able to gather to empower women in the region. Thank you very much. Thank you, Claudio, for these very interesting reflections. We celebrate the important coincidences that we have been achieving as far as the diagnosis in the aspects of rural areas, indigenous women. We've seen that many groups and all the different discussions we've had and coincide with the proposals set forth by FAO and the possibility of sustaining a dialogue that is permanent between the civil society and those of us that are in the different territories. We are the protagonists of our life in the field, in production, of our production, the food and the availability of food in the world is part of our involvement. We also share wish and the decision of FAO to promote mechanisms that will continue promoting dialogue of women in governance, because we do know very perfectly, and we understand from our own experiences, the public policies, it is a challenge. There are good declarations out there, good principles, but they do not become real. And from our experiences on a daily basis and from our organizations and our knowledge that we can provide input so that public policies become a fact and that women have a more extensive participation. There is a coincidence in what took place in each one of the groups. One of the most important gender gaps that we need to overcome and we need to transform is the participation of women in decision-making processes, not only in the daily decision-making processes in production, but the decision-making process and the real participation and governance in the territory and the dialogue with it at the different instances where public policies are being discussed. So we consider the civil society organizations that have participated in this dialogue today are available to continue discussing all the mechanisms that we can build jointly with FAO for a better participation, a better follow-up, so that the priorities of this biennium will allow us to better progress and advance in aspects of gender that affect us. I've been asked to take a picture. There's still a little bit to listen, a little time to listen to some reflections by Perla. You can please turn on your camera so everybody is available. Turn on your cameras and we will take a picture.
Vamos a tener que sacar varias fotos porque somos muchas.
We will have to
many
take
pictures
various
because
pictures
there's many of us.
because we are many.
Estamos todas con las cámaras prendidas, muy bien.
All the cameras are on, very well then. Very well. Who's going to take the picture?
Listo la foto, muchas gracias.
Muchas
Picture
gracias.
is ready. Thank you very much.
Pasen la foto.
Just forward the picture, please. So now I have the pleasure of leaving you with Perla Alvarez, Secretary of for the Alliance for Food Sovereignty of the People, who's going to be sharing a message. Perla, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, partners. Good afternoon, everyone who's here from wherever they are. I hope that you have good health, and especially well-being, because that is how we can continue contributing to our work for food sovereignty. And greetings from the Continental Alliance for Food Sovereignty and from our organization, Scanamuri, the organization of Indigenous Farming Women of Paraguay, member of CLOP, the Latin American coordinator of farms organizations. With several of you, we have managed to get the alliance precisely. I'm very happy to see here partners from the Caribbean that we don't always meet, so I always try to be a bit slower for the interpretation to be to have enough time. Thank you so much to Carolina and Laura who took the work of preparing the methodology, paying attention and working on this call, to Paola who is contributing very closely, the FAO partners who were working on our proposal for opening this space for the topic dialogue on gender gaps, for doing this right, which we call food sovereignty, that includes the right to food, but also the right to good nutrition, and especially where our role is fundamental in terms of women who work in farms. Our work for producing food, but also our work of looking after our environment. In order to feed, we need to have a healthy environment and we need to be healthy ourselves. So our bond with food production and healthcare and our own health, the health of our families and our communities, and the health of our environment, it is crucial. And that is why we value this space for dialogue, where we raise a number of proposals and queries and visions so they can enrich the consultation of civil society that is being done by FAO in the framework of its 38th conference, but also it's going to be feeding the declaration of the conference where which we are building here collectively will go and nourish that conference that is going to be done in March. So we believe this is a virtual space for participation that we're generating, and often we demand these spaces to our territory. Sometimes it's easier to participate in spaces, in regional spaces or international spaces that rather than our own territories. And that is where that demand for greater presence of FAO in our territories has an importance because it plays an articulating role. So that is why we also talk from the alliance where we have been working on as members of the Policy Committee. We talked about a new access for the discussion in the framework of this consultation that has to do with this governance of all of these topics related to food, agriculture, agroecological production, where we say we're in a very adverse context for our work for producing food and also always continuing being those who are in our territories because we have a motto that disputes our territories in order to produce goods, not necessarily food, but to produce just food. And we produce food and we want to continue producing food, but also as we produce food, want to continue caring for the nature from which we took that food and we bring that care back to the land. And therefore, there becomes important to have these pillars that we have been discussing in the groups, that you were discussing in the groups because I just joined now and I listened to the presentations of the different groups and we match a lot here because we all come from from farming territories, indigenous territories, from fisher women, people who work on the direction of animals at a family scale, um, community scale, and these are the ones that we nourish ourselves with, and we nourish cities as well. So when we speak about the space of consultation of the civil society in the framework of where we're doing this dialogue, and the next one that we're going to be doing next week that has to do with youth, that necessary dialogue and the participation that we demand as women also by youth. They are the main player. Often they are the invisible players in the decision-making process, and that is why this space is so important where we are demanding this. But not only we demand in terms of making a complaint, we demand our proposals to be taken into account, that our proposals be included in the policies. And often in the dialogue with the technical team of FAO that we are speaking of the possibility of having a more political discussion with the director in the framework of this consult, we say that even the format that the documentation should have, when partners say the questions 1, 2, 3, the ones that motivate the dialogue in the groups, they have a great wealth, a more dynamic wealth of our own proposals where we are political object, we're productive subjects, we're social subjects, and this is what we demand. And we have the gap in general for the making of a right. So here we spoke that the instruments make the inequalities visible in terms of gender between men and women or sexual diversities. And this difference should be taken into account when talking about this. So, for instance, some of the partners were saying they were talking about credits, and often It's not that we don't have credit for women, we do, but sometimes they require them to be owners of the land as a collateral, or they need to be authorized by the partners and they have no contact with them. And also, if they have land as a collateral, there's a risk of losing that. So we will need to generate all the type of instrument that can really contribute and promote this main playing role that we have in the production, but also in the trading as well, because we are those who say the biggest elements of the pandemic in terms of exchange of trading and donations as well. It was women who made the popular pots and the donations of food for cities. What we were saying now when we talked about these gaps is that these public policies often are technical proposals of FAO to our countries that motivate our countries to have these public policies. We want them to be done with this participation so they can take this visibility from the point of view of diversity, farming women, indigenous women, and we share the rural aspect of life, but our ways of seeing and talking about things are very particular in themselves. The issue of fishing, often we can't even view these as part of the cycles of our farming production and agricultural production, but also we're talking that we produce industries as a manufacturing level in our communities. We make cheese, sweets, a number of foods, and we need these to have great value so we can also have some income from it. It's not enough with the satisfaction of our food needs that sometimes because of the lack of land we can't meet, but also we need them to have added value because we always demand other services that are monetized and we need to be in that. Above all, also these public policies that have to do with the generation of markets, markets for our products that also need infrastructure. Oftentimes, along the way, to go to cities, we lose because it demands for greater resources in terms of in financial terms to reach the cities. But it also has to do with our own care. We are being damaged by having bad roads, bad transport areas that our neighbors and companies are fumigating next to our sites. That generates an impact in our community. That is why we talk about caring for the land, not only the farms, but the territory. And this point of view is something that we have a lot of clarity on, especially women, because we see this in our bodies and in the health of our families. And this is what we sometimes demand from these institutions that our participation should be permanent, even when in an organization they have these demands that are more politicized. Sometimes it seems that we're not given the full participation only when it is about merely economic or social matters. And we say, okay, we also need to speak about policies because this affects our lives. Political decisions affect our lives, and therefore we demand to have political participation from our day-to-day life. If you take this into account. So saying that our proposals are to guarantee these rights, we have some models that we have proposed. Agroecology is a model that recovers all of our ancestral knowledge, incorporates academic knowledge. We do not reject technology. We want technology to be appropriate and that it should contribute to the improvement of our livelihoods, not to damage the environment, as it is the case of the technology of agribusiness, because it's a full package. They have GMO seeds, heavy machinery, they have the use of agrochemicals. in a very constant, persistent way. And all of these technologies, not what we want. We want agroecological technology that will contribute to improve labor conditions, acknowledgement of our work, valorization of our work, and good payment for our work. I would say, my dear colleagues, I would like to greet you on this space. I would like to thank you for the opportunity of this dialogue. And also, we expect that you can accompany those who are not going to be in person here in the framework of the consult. You can also join us through the FAO and the same in the framework of the conference. And in this proposal opened by Claudia, how can we have an incidence in the modification of the Beijing Agreement? We believe it's a very important instrument because in reality, farming women are not very visible here, or women who are indigenous from the countryside. Indigenous women have been very much used in the first one, but they have a declaration that is the basis in order to process in those terms. So we believe that we have tools where we can contribute to improve the tools, but especially that these should have resources that go all the way to the territories to make the proposals more effective. Having said this, I would like to once again thank everyone for your availability for this dialogue, and whatever comes from here surely will nourish our meetings. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Perla, for your words. We're already coming to the closing of this dialogue. I would like to thank everyone who logged in today, all of the people who have contributed with their ideas and opinions. We are already working the systemization, and as Perla was saying, it's very important to take all of these things that we've done today to the civil society that we're going to be doing at the end of February. And we'd like to also make a special invitation to remind you, because we already invited you, but we would like to kindly invite you, to all the young people of the region, to participate in our next theme dialogue, leadership in the youth and spokesmanships in the agricultural agenda on the 22nd of February between 2 and 5 p.m. Chilean time. On the chat, you're going to be getting the link to register, and this meeting is going to be shared on FAO American Network as well. And we don't want to close this dialogue without taking a moment to thank to the whole FAO team who has worked with a lot of commitment for this dialogue to be possible. We'd like to thank all of the technical team, the interpreters, and especially Duca and Claudia, who have joined us in this dialogue, and that we hope that this was very good for all of you, and that we consider that it's very important for us, the members of the civil society, to keep these dialogue channels open, and we thank for the FAO for this construction in this sense. So with that, without any further ado, we hope to meet you soon. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.